What up, Wizards? It's Dev. SPMTG, we like it a magic. And we do like it a magic, especially standard. Normally, right? Over the last few years, I'm one of the few content creators on the whole internet that has consistently defended standard. I've always liked it. My entire magic lifetime, which is actually longer than the lifetime of standard. Back when we called it Type 2. For the old folks in the audience, I've always been a fan of standard. I like the rotating nature of it, sort of keeps things fresh. I like that every few months we get a set that largely caters to our format. So usually I love standard. Usually. But you see, these last few years have been trying times, to say the least, right? I mean, first there was Kaladesh Standard. If you want to go all the way back there and say this is where it started, you probably can. There was a huge wave of bannings, a lot of complaints during that format. But, you know, whenever I go to social media and people are talking about Kaladesh, I'm kind of amazed at how many people seem to fondly remember that format, or that set at the very least. So if people seem to have fun during that era, I'm not going to take that away from them. But when it comes to Eldraine Standard, I think it's almost universally, and I say almost universally, because if there's one thing the last few years of getting to know Magic players has taught me, it's that there's not one opinion that we all share, but most of us can agree that Eldraine was the definition of a dumpster fire of a standard. You know, wave after wave of banning after banning that didn't work. And yeah, I know, you've already seen the title of the video. You've seen the thumbnail. You know what this video is about. But in a second, I'm going to tell you what this video is not about. So that's going to be very important right before we get to the content. But I'm still kind of in intro land right here. I'm feeling myself out, you know, kind of get ramping up, establishing a rhythm here. But in any case, Throne of Eldraine Standard, we can almost universally agree, was kind of oppressive. That was a good word for it. There were way too many powerful cards, and it was kind of choking everything out of the format. I mean, it was like a 2-year stranglehold was Throne of Eldraine, and that's bad when that happens. But I would argue that current Standard, not too long after Throne of Eldraine rotated out, but current Standard is in some ways even worse than that, because I wouldn't call it oppressive, but I would call it boring. Predictable, stale, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the worst things that any format can be. And in the last few years, we were crowing and cawing about, you know, this oppressive deck, or no, this deck is too strong, this card is too strong. But I will say Standard has felt stale in these last few years a couple of times, but in a lot of ways not as stale as it feels now. You know, if you've seen the results from the recent Red Bull Untapped event, the most recent one, these events have over 1,000 entrants per event. And not only were most of the deck lists mono white, mono green, and Epiphany, but obviously all the top 8 decks were mono white, mono green, and Epiphany, and it's been that way for a long time. I shared those results on Twitter and said, you know, these aren't results from 6 weeks ago. They could have been results from 6 months ago. They're not results from 6 weeks ago. They're results from 6 hours ago. I mean, for the last few months, these decks have just been like the only real thing to do in Standard. And yeah, you can probably get to Mythic with your, like, you know, black, white, blood on the snow deck, or, you know, whatever janky thing you got going. As long as you're dedicated enough, I'm sure you can do pretty well on the ladder. But the only true decks in true competitive tournament play right now, the big 3 at least, is it mono white and mono green. And that has begun to get on a lot of people's nerves, myself included. But I'm not the only one with this opinion. I've seen content creators both huge and smaller these last few weeks especially talk about how Standard is in a really rough spot when it comes to replayability. I think is a good word for it. Is it basically pushes most other late game or even mid-range decks out of the format, and the other 2 decks are basically aggro decks. They're trying to go underneath the Is It Epiphany decks, and that kind of just doesn't leave room for anything in the format aside from those decks, unless you go really underneath Epiphany but can also beat the other aggro decks, right? It doesn't leave much of a shot for cool aggro decks that have cool tribal synergies that are all over Standard right now. I mean, Vampires is a decent deck, but why would you play a 2-color aggro deck that gets access to worse creature lands than a Faceless Haven, and in some cases worse removal, right? I mean, Jeff Hooglin responded to me on Twitter the other day when I put up a poll about what we would ban given the choice to ban something in mono green. He responded with Blizzard Brawl because, and I thought this was a really interesting insight, it's kind of messed up that 2-color aggro decks, when you splash a color in your green deck, you get worse removal. If you splash black or red, you end up with worse removal in your green deck because you can't play Blizzard Brawl anymore, or at least not as effectively as you could in a monocolored deck. So another thing is, why would you play a 2-color aggro deck with tribal synergies when you could play a monocolored aggro deck that's far more consistent mana-wise and has a bunch of cards that are just like individually good? So again, that pushes out things like vampires and clerics, which is actually a really cool deck right now with a ton of like awesome synergies and ways to get stuff back in the graveyard. Pushes out the life gain decks, which I don't think too many people are complaining about, but it pushes out all manner of like combo decks and cool mid-range things you could be doing with like Dollhouse of Horrors and stuff. Like, there's a bunch of awesome cards that they printed over the last year or so that seem really cool. I want to play with those, but you just literally can't play with like 90% of the cards that they printed in the last year because of what Standard looks like right now. And so we've come to the body of the video. We're going to talk about cards that they could ban, and I wouldn't be upset about it. I think that's what I made the title of this video, because I'm trying to be very particular here. Here's what this video is not. This video is not me saying, we need to ban these cards right now or Standard is forever kaput. It's a bad format and no one's ever going to enjoy it again if we don't ban these cards, and we need to do it right now, and I'm in favor of banning cards all the time. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing at this point. It's almost an indifference thing, you know? Like, if they ban these cards tomorrow, I would probably actually be like, oh, cool. You know, it's like I can build decks now, and that's what I want. So I want to be able to go about building cool decks again and feel like they're actually going to win some games against some of these ridiculous decks. And again, it's not an oppressiveness thing. It's a knowing the play patterns, knowing that if I play, you know, this 4-mana artifact, this 5-mana artifact or enchantment or something like that, it's just going to get divided by 0. They're going to love the fact that I did that because they get to divide by 0 or whatever. You know, I play my 5-mana creature and they divide by 0, or they Fading Hope that or something. Or, you know, by the time I get to my 4-mana enchantment my entire deck is built around, then suddenly I'm dead on the next turn to, you know, Alpha Strike from Mono White. So, you know, these are problems in a lot of formats. And if you just started playing Magic in the last few years, you might think like, oh yeah, I mean, that's, you know, how it is. You know, like, mono red kills you with Embercleave on turn 4, and that's just how it is. And it's like, not really. That's not how it was in Standard for a long time. Mid-range had a home. Matter of fact, Standard was the home for mid-range decks and like wacky combos for a good long time, and a lot of us had fun for years and years in this format. It can be that way again. But again, I'm not like I'm not saying like we absolutely must ban these cards or I will not be happy. It's not. That is not what this video is. Well, some people are gonna wish it was that. And then other people are going to say, like, how could you ever want to ban a card under any circumstances? I don't understand that mindset. Bans are bad, period. And not really. Not really. Sometimes bans can be really good. As a matter of fact, I kind of liked, like, every ban during Eldraine Standard. Not necessarily because, and this is very important, not necessarily because I thought, like, Lucky Clover absolutely needs to be banned. Or Agent of Treachery is not a good example, because I thought that card needed to be banned. But, like, there are plenty of cards. Fires of Invention, a card that probably did realistically need to be banned, but even I was like, yeah, we could probably be okay with Fires of Invention in the format. But even then, I was happy that Fires was banned. Here's why. We get to build decks again. Standard is new and fresh, and it's almost like a mini rotation of sorts, right? And I actually really enjoyed those times, you know, when even for just a few days or a week during Eldraine Standard after some bannings, things felt bright and hopeful and new and all that. And then, you know, 2 weeks later we discover that, you know, Genesis Ultimatum or Emergent Ultimatum is the best deck in the format, and it's become something we hate playing against. So I'm not saying that even after you ban something, a new deck won't come along, but for a few glorious weeks, Standard feels like a format that people actually want to play and build decks in again, and that's kind of, in a way, all I'm asking for. But if you don't ban these cards, I'll still play Standard. You got me right where you want me. I'll still play Standard. But in case you do want to ban some cards, I got some suggestions. I got some suggestions for you. And honestly, I don't really think that there's too much in this video that's like especially groundbreaking. I think a lot of these picks you'll be like, well, yeah. So let's run through these really quick because I've already spent way too much time setting up, and you're just gonna know. You already know like all the cards I'm gonna name. So let's go ahead and say Alrund's Epiphany and get that out of the way. Because again, I just did a video on this like a month or so ago, and I pretty much said everything I wanted to say there, I think. But at this back then, I was like, I don't know if we should ban Alrund's Epiphany. At this point, I think we could be 100% on board with it, right? I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying I'm advocating for it, but if you banned Alrund's Epiphany tomorrow, I'd be like, maybe we can play mid-range again. Let's try, right? I think there's still some problems. Like, if you ban Alrund's Epiphany tomorrow, there's still Hullbreaker Horror, and part of me actually thinks that Hullbreaker Horror pushes mid-range out of the format even more than Alrund's Epiphany does. Really, it's just a really hard card to beat once it's on the table. And if it's still around after Epiphany's gone, I'm pretty sure that the Epiphany decks just get even more boring. Like they just play the same basic play pattern they always did. You know, Fading Hope that guy, Dragon's Fire that guy, Divide by Zero that spell, play my 7 mana thing and win. You know, it's probably still how it's going to be. So set's only been out for a little while, but Hullbreaker Horror is already looking like the whole breakout star from that set. And it's just kind of everywhere in Standard right now. It's a really important card already. And I don't know that we should, like, ban Hullbreaker Horror, but if you do end up banning Alrund's Epiphany, this is the next 7-mana blue card that you have to look sideways at, because I'm pretty sure it's going to rule the format at the top end of curves from here until it's gone from Standard. If you don't ban it. Whatever happened to restricting cards? Remember that? We used to restrict cards? Like, one copy of Hullbreaker sounds fine. Like, one copy of Alrund's Epiphany, that sounds fine, right? But no, I guess we can't do that anymore for some reason. Just bring back restricting cards. Bring back restricting cards, that'd be fine. But still, Hullbreaker is a problem, but obviously Alrund's Epiphany is the thing that has probably attracted the most eye-roll emojis in the history of Magic the Gathering Arena, so I think most of us can agree, even the Epiphany players. I am occasionally an Epiphany player. I don't have any fun playing that deck. Do you have fun playing that deck at this point still? I don't know. I think that even some Epiphany players can agree that, like, they ban this card tomorrow, you just get to play Magic differently than you were. And that, I would argue, is a good thing. I'm kind of trying to go through and ban a card from each color because that just seems right to me. It seems like a good format for this video. But I guess I've already named 2 blue cards. They're both problems. Hullbreaker Horror is a problem. Seriously. It's a bit of an issue. But anyway, I guess when we go to green, that's when things get interesting. I've already mentioned that I asked Twitter the other day if you could ban one card from mono green, what would it be? And Blizzard Brawl was probably the most mentioned card. It's a really, really good card. Blizzard Brawl is great, but I side with the people who said Asika's Chariot. And like some people said Old Growth Troll. There were a bunch of answers to this. Some people said Snakeskin Veil banned from that deck. So there was answers all across the board, which should tell you something about the mono green deck. But I would say Asika's Chariot makes the most sense to me. There's a ton of decks right now that just can't handle this thing hitting the table. It's so much value. It's like always a 3-for-1, right? I mean, they get the Chariot, they get the 2 cats. You might take out the Chariot, they keep the cats. You might sweep the cats, they keep the Chariot. And it's just, there's just no single card that seems to be able to deal with everything except for like Devastating Mastery. And even the people who were on Devastating Mastery 3 weeks ago have stopped playing that card. I guess you play Ondu Inversion. Oh, you just have to play bad cards if you want if you want to deal with all of it at the same time. Cards that no one plays. So I just don't know. It feels like way too much value. I like the Cadillac as much as the next guy, and I've played it in a bunch of decks. And there's fun stuff you can do within the format besides mono green, right? Like you play this in your Kaya deck. You play Kaya on turn 3, the 3-mana Planeswalker. You -2 her on the next turn. You play your Chariot, you get 4 cats. That's awesome and stuff. But like again, like I was saying earlier with the aggro decks, like why would you play 3 colors? You just play mono green and just like roll over people with your Chariot like super consistently on turn 3 when you play it on turn 3. So I think that Chariot is probably the strongest card in that deck. And I would not be sad to see the card go. I would not. I guess I wouldn't be too sad to see Blizzard Brawl go either. But I am interested in all of your picks. Like if you had to ban a card from each of the popular decks in the format, mono white, mono green, and Epiphany, But let's say, and for the purposes of the comment section, let's say that you have to ban one card from Epiphany, but it can't be Epiphany or Hullbreaker Horror. It can't be the cards that I mentioned. It also can't be. You can say Divide by Zero. Hope I didn't just skew the poll there, because like, kind of really sick of Divide by Zero myself, and I bet everybody else is too. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, what would you ban from mono white, mono green, any of these decks? And I still say my pick is Chariot. I think it's just too much. It's come on, it's a little too much. So now we're in white. And if I had to ban a card from there, it's actually, to some people this might be really hard. I'm not going to ban Thalia. She just came out and she's fine. It's fine. I don't think this card actually helps a lot against like certain other cards in the format, certain other decks that are important. So I don't know. Thalia's all right. Fine. I don't think anybody wants to ban Thalia anyway. Probably, except for the one person in the comment section. I hate Thalia. But anyway, besides you, I see you. I'm with you. I know your heart. But there's a lot of good candidates for this slot. There are. I think some people might want to ban like Brutal Cathar, Skyclave Apparition, or something like that. But to me, it's not even close at all. Sort of. Not even close. And it's Luminarch Aspirant. I mean, this card is a pain in the aspirant to deal with, isn't it? I don't like the card. I don't like the card. It's, over the course of just like 2 or 3 turns, it just completely outstats anything you have going on. Like if one player has a Luminarch Aspirant, the other player doesn't, you start stalemating. It's just kind of a foregone conclusion at that point, unless you can draw the removal spell, obviously. But I'm not saying that Luminarch Aspirant needs a ban. I'm not. I mean, that's true of all the cards in this video. And I'd say the Luminarch Aspirant is probably, so far, the card that I've talked about that least deserves a ban. But I hate it. I hate the card. Could you still play Clerics without Luminarch Aspirant? It's not as good, but you could still play it, right? In any case, if I had to ban it, just if I was forced at, wand point to ban one card from mono white, knowing how many decent options there are, I would pick Aspirant 3 times in a row, and then another 2 times after that, because I can't stand it. I've never been able to stand you. You're too much. But now I have to ban a card from red. I guess it's Goldspan Dragon. I guess it's another thing is we want mid-range to survive, right? And I'm pretty sure that without Epiphany, without Hullbreaker Horror, there's still a home. There's still an Is It deck that effectively just plays Goldspan. And maybe even like Maniform Hellkite. Like maybe we get an actual Dragons deck. And that's cool. I'm not averse to that at all. Galazeth starts seeing some more play. That'd be good. But I think that this is just a good card for so many decks. And it's not that it helps push mid-range out of the format. It's just that every good mid-range deck would probably have Goldspan Dragon in it, which forces you into red, and not only red, but double red, so it has to be a big part of your deck. And that just, again, that sounds like a stale format to me. But there's a ton you can do with this card right now, right? There's green-red haste, or just Gruul, period. There's mono-red dragons, which is actually a really fun deck. There's obviously Izzet. So I don't want Goldspan Dragon to die for Izzet Epiphany's sins, but in a format that didn't have a card like Luminarch or Esca's Chariot or Epiphany or Hullbreaker Horror, I think the Goldspan is just like the best creature in the format. So it's kind of an honorable mention, but it's not even really. The last card I have to bring up is an honorable mention, and I guess that's only because I have to name a black card. Just to be fair, we're doing every color in this video, so even though there's not really a whole lot in black that's like really difficult to deal with right now, I guess if I had to name like one black card that, especially if you banned all the other cards on this list, I might also take a look at, especially after like the format's been going on for a couple of weeks. This is probably going to make a lot of people mad. This video in general is. Try not to get mad. Life is fun if you let it be. Anyway, it's probably Blood on the Snow. Not even a great. That statement's going to make people mad. Not even a great Magic card. It's just a fine one, right? A sweep of it also gets your Lolth, your Sorin back, or whatever. That's good. Good Magic card. And it's one of those that's like kind of on the fringe of playability right now. This whole deck, whether it's mono black or black white or red black or green black, there's a lot of Blood on the Snow decks out there right now. I still think maybe you ban Lolth. Maybe that's what it is. You just ban their best Planeswalker. But I don't want to ban like an iconic D&D character that is also the queen of all spiders, which makes her the coolest character in the history of Magic. It's possible. Spider Queen. I want to ban that. It's really awesome. But so is Blood on the Snow, right? It's good flavor, good artwork, good function. But I think that, there's a lot of decks a lot of like black decks with Loth and Planeswalkers, and if you wanted to do like a mono black control, you could probably still do it without Blood on the Snow. Like, weird statement probably to a lot of people who play Blood on the Snow decks, but I think you could still do it without your 6 mana sweeper. I mean, just ask yourself this, Blood on the Snow players. How many times have you actually died before getting to this card? It happens a good bit. Well, not if you get Shambling Ghast on turn 1 like you always do. That card is the best speed. Maybe we should ban Shambling Ghast. Is that the real culprit here? I don't know. But I guess, again, if I absolutely must name a black card, Blood on the Snow? What would you name? If you got to name a black card in Standard, what is it? I can't come up with like another one. So my mind is a blank right now. Like, what is another good one? You tell me in the comment section. You can't ban Blood on the Snow. You can't ban Loth. What black card do you ban? Just let me know how you feel about that. These statements made herein in the comments section. Maybe go easy on me. If you want to be kind, that'd be nice. But, I actually get the feeling, though, that this video won't get as much hate from anti-banners as videos like this usually get, right? Because I think a lot of us are at a point where, like, we probably wouldn't mind seeing the majority of these cards go. I don't know about Goldspan or Blood on the Snow, but I don't know. There's probably a lot of you out there that are like, yes, please ban Goldspan Dragon. I'm sick of it. But anyway, just let me know how you felt about all the takes, I guess, down there in the comments section. How you do things differently. If you were forced to ban cards from these decks or from these colors, like, what would you do? We get a fun dialogue started, right? Even if we never ban a card, this whole Standard, it's at least fun to talk about. Dare to dream. Dream of a world that might be. But anyway, that's all I've got for now. So if you liked it, liked the video, it makes sense. You can also subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this content. I got a lot more like it and a lot more coming. So there's a lot of Magic to be talked, even with a stale Standard. There's a lot of Magic to be talked. So sub to the channel should be more likely to see videos from me in the future. That's how YouTube should work. It doesn't always, but give it a shot. And aside from that, you can do any of the stuff down here. You can go over to Twitch and watch me play some Magic. We've been having a lot of fun lately on our climb from Bronze to Mythic this season. I don't think we'll make it to Mythic this season because the season's like over. We'll get there eventually. But we're finally playing Ladder on stream, which is what you seem to all want. So I'm doing that for you. But you can also check out the Patreon, just $1 a month to vote on content and whatnot. And that's fun. It's just $1 a month to support the channel. And like, it's only $1. Come on, I'm worth $1 a month, aren't I? Am I not? If you don't have the scratch, that's fine. I'm just glad that you're here. But aside from that, just let me know how you felt about it in the comments section. And I will catch you cats later. Thanks for going easy on me. I'm Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.